Hello, everyone. Welcome to EMD Media. EMD Media works on understanding, measuring, and doing. And it strives for evidence-based discourse and decision-making in Ethiopia and in the Horn. Today, we'll be talking about the Patriarch Abune Mathias' latest message, video message, released thanks to Mr. Dennis Wadley. And we'll be talking about the message and the experience Dennis and Susan had in Tigray. And as we know, Tigray has been under unspeakable atrocities and crimes that are happening against the people of Tigray since November 4. So it's my great pleasure today to have Dennis Wadley from California. And welcome to the show, to EMD Media.
Thank you, Gitachi. Good to be with you today.
Great. So for those who saw the video and who saw your social media posts and so on, they know what we are talking about. Maybe the first thing I want to present is, who is Dennis? So if people want to follow you and see what you have been doing and where you come from, I just have some pictures to show. So this is your Twitter account, and if I look at this is your Facebook, this is a family, and then you have a bio and in terms of what you do and so on. So you have been, working in a number of areas with a degree in theology and supporting communities from South Africa to other communities and so on. For those who are on LinkedIn, they can find you there as well. So you are on the social media sites and so on. And then back during the Abune Paulus time, I'm sure this will bring memories. And this is, I think, posted within days after his. You can speak to that maybe.
Yeah. So this was at a ceremony that took place just 2 weeks before his death, and all of the bishops were in this gathering, and I had the honor. He invited me to come up and to dine with him at the end of this meeting. It was a graduation ceremony, and it was just such a privilege to count him as a friend, and such an honor to be a part of the last couple of years of his life.
Mm-hmm. And for me, Dennis, this shows me that you are not just coming out of the blue to just release this video. You have been in the country and very closely working with the church at the highest level, and of course working with leadership training and so on. So we'll not maybe going into the details of that, but tell us, when did the first contact with Ethiopia, with the church started? Paint a picture for us in terms of understanding where this is in terms of the background.
Yeah, my wife and I actually came to meetings in Addis Ababa in 2004 and met some different church leaders and all. And it was one of those times we got on the airplane and we left and we looked at each other and we said, I think God wants us back here. We just fell in love with the people of Ethiopia, fell in love with those who we met. And then in 2009, we were invited into meetings with some leaders with a desire to do community development training. There's a model of development called community health education that we use and train people in around the globe. And we started training leaders from all regions of the nation and have been doing that now for 11 years. And that has opened up the opportunity for me to get to know Abune Mathias, and then had the great privilege when Abune Mathias, came into office, to get to know him and share with him, what we do and who we work with. And he's just been so engaged and so encouraging his heart is so much for the people of Ethiopia and all of Ethiopia. And he just, would invite me to sit and share. And I was also really able to get to know him as a friend. I consider him a dear friend.
Mm. And with that background and what happened on November 4, the war started. And the next day on November 5, I hope our viewers can see that. This is November 5. You were, pleading for prayer for Ethiopia.
Yeah.
And you were specifically also mentioning the Orthodox Church in terms of the partnership you had and so on. And just, Dennis, how and in what condition did you hear about the start of the war on November 4 or maybe November 5?
Yeah, when I heard, my heart just broke, just knowing, again, I am not involved in any level in any politics within Ethiopia. Politics is not my thing. I am about empowering people to bring about community change and to heal broken families, broken individuals, to help communities find transformation. And so for me, it had nothing to do with politics. It just broke my heart that this war had begun. And, the fact that I have been so connected with people in Tigray, even though I work with people from all around the nation, it just broke my heart. And so we started rallying people to pray. And then, as the atrocities of what began to unfold came out, it was just so much worse than we could have imagined.
Talking about, the scale and the atrocities, the suffering of the people, mothers, kids and children separated and so on. You mentioned on December 20th, this is your social media, where you talk about, again, pleading to people to pray so that we avoid another Rwanda or the Rwanda of this generation and so on. So for me, you kind of saw for what it was in terms of the scale and the atrocities, civilians getting killed, massacred, in churches everywhere and so on. And then I think you were still in the US or outside Ethiopia, because I know you flew yesterday, you are tired, I will not keep you long, and we have another media show coming. So with this understanding, when you went and met Abune Mathias, the Patriarch, just paint a picture for us how it felt and how he ended up, doing that messaging. So the environment, the vibe, the discussion you had, that would be helpful in understanding where the video is coming from.
Yeah. It was really a sweet time. I, had just arrived from Tigray and, went in and he asked, what I had seen. And I just told him how bad it was. I told him how the military is completely in control of Mekelle still and, in the streets, and how people had been murdered on the streets while we were there. Innocent victims just standing, waiting for a bus, 12 of them murdered. And that there were, the stories of rape were true, and that we had done a trauma healing training, that we, had done our best to try to help and to bring relief and supplies. We've been raising funds through buckforgood.com to be able to send funds over. And that has been, part of it. The picture that you have on the screen now is a little girl who, she and her family were fleeing the military, and she was shot in the knee, and her family thought that she was going to bleed out. It was just a heinous thing. And they ran and ran, had to keep running, couldn't stop and get her any help. And thankfully she's healing up well. But I just shared with him what had happened. I shared with him what I'd seen. And then I asked him about, his input into this and how the people of Tigray, were sharing with us. They so desperately need his voice. They so desperately need to hear from him in this huge void. And then he told me what had happened. He invited me to share this. So this is with his permission. He said, 3 times he had tried to do interviews. One of them was with the Orthodox media company, and he had done a 40-minute filmed video. But he said there are people leaking information and that the government had found out and the government had shut them down. They had threatened them. They've threatened the lives of those around him. He has no fear for his own life, but he said, I have fear for the people around me, the bishops and those who are close to me, that they are going to lose their lives. And they've arrested twice his personal concierge, the guy who kind of administrates for him. He was arrested, still in jail when I was there meeting with him. And he said, I can't get a message out. And when I speak in public, people have said, well, why didn't he say something when he spoke in public? He said, because they're watching me and they're threatening to kill the people that are around me. And he said, I didn't know what to do. And so I said to him, I said, well, if you want to, I said, right now, I said, I can pull out my phone and I can take a video and I will get it out there. I'll get it to the media. And he stopped and he said, would you do that? He said, it's dangerous. He said, he's concerned now for my safety. And I told him, I said, this has to end, this war, this genocide, the raping of thousands and thousands of women, this has to end. And he said, I know. And he said, I will do it. And so I didn't coerce him at all. I told him, this is your choice. This, I am not in your position, but I said, if you want me to, I am willing to do it. And so he literally just paused for about 10 seconds and he said, I'm ready. There was no rehearsal. There was no script. There was no planning. He paused for about 10 seconds and he said, I'm ready. And I hit record. And what you see on that video is the patriarch sharing his heart, sharing his passion, sharing his beliefs of what's taking place in the nation and in Tigray. And there was no second take. There was no editing. What you see is just him pouring out his heart for the people he loves. And his love is for the whole nation. He said that to me before the recording. He said, I can't believe this is happening. And I can't believe that, Ethiopians are allowing this to happen. And so for him, he wants the leadership. He wants the people of Ethiopia to come together and to heal this wound. But what you saw was just him pouring out his heart. And our goal was to fly out the next night. But that's when we found out that when we went to get our tests to fly out that we had COVID. So that's what the pause was. It took us a while before we could get out of the country.
It breaks my heart, the silencing and the pain he had to go through. I know, and everyone who followed him knows that even well before the war, he was advocating in public. September 2020, during the celebration of the Mescal at the Mescal Square, he articulated it in public that he is for dialogue, national dialogue, so that people's lives could be saved everywhere in the country. And I remember when there was atrocities, massacres happening elsewhere, he was crying, he was tearful and saying, why we should stop this and so on. So this is a man, a father who is the father of the nation, and so on. So it's painful.
It is.
Even the media of the church, after recording, and he mentions it clearly there, even giving a specific date when that recording happened and why that was silenced. Right. So, let me play a bit of that and we will continue from there.
Great.
ጉድ እንዲህ አይነት ግፍ ተደርጎ ተሰምቶ አይታወቅም። እጅግ አስቀያሚ ነው። በተለይ የሴቶች መደፈር በጣም የረከሰ፣ በጣም የቆሸሸ፣ በጣም የጸያፍ እየተሰራ ነው ያለው። እንዲህ አይነት ድፍረት እንዲህ አይነት ቆሻሻ የሆነ ስራ መስራት ህዝብ እያለቀ ነው ያለ፣ ክፉኛ እያለቀ ነው ያለ። ሴቶች እየተደፈሩ ነው ያሉት። ሴቶች እየተሳቀዩ ነው ያሉት። እንዲያውም ከነሱ የሞቱ ይሻላል፣ የሞቱ ወንዶቹ ይሻላሉ። ዘላለማዊ ስቃይ በህይወታቸው ሙሉ ከአእምሯቸው የማይፋቅ ጠባሳ እያስቀመጡባቸው ነው ያሉት በኢትዮጵያ በትግራይ ሴት።
I will bring the one with the English subtitle later. So that's a very powerful message where he says God will judge everything. He's clear about what's happening and the destruction. He mentions the lives of Tigrayans and their properties and their rights are destroyed or taken
completely
away. Yeah, and he is wondering and he's asking why this happening to the church, to the faithful in Tigray and so on. So you went to Mekelle, and before you met him, so what did you see there? If if we were to use your eyes as our eyes, what will we be seeing in Mekelle and elsewhere you have been to?
Yeah, I have lots of pictures, I have video, but what we saw first off was the military presence. The military is fully in charge of Mekelle and Tigray. They have not left. The G7 has called upon them to leave. The world leaders have called upon them to leave. They have not left. They must leave. And what we saw first was that, and that was constant every day in every scenario, and in the bank, in the Ethiopian office, in the streets, military trucks running everywhere. It was just constant, and fear on the part of the people. When we got there, there were 19 IDP centers, the refugee centers, and when we left a week later, there were 21. The newest one that began, Mamona, they're taking over schools and they're filling them with people. And this one had just opened a few days before, and there were 1,885 IDPs in this Mamona school. And it was children, it was nursing mothers, it was pregnant moms, it was elderly, not a single mattress, no food. We put out a plea on Buck for Good to get people to give, and thank God we got over $1,000 the first day. We were able to provide food for them. At the same time, let me tell you, the community of Mekelle has been remarkable. If you find an elderly woman with one piece of injera, she will tear it in half, and she will eat the half, and she will take a half and give it to the people in these IDP centers. A lot of these centers, when they first open, before there's any help, it's literally the community pouring out clothing and food to keep people alive. But yeah, the center that we worked with has 2,210. They also, the Orthodox Church had also opened up a center specifically for the women who are pregnant and the nursing moms, and they have 12 doctors serving over 40,000 people. They're volunteering their time. They're young people, they're precious young people who are caring for all those who are sick, for those who have been wounded and shot. They are the ones who are caring. It was far worse than we could have imagined, and the needs, unfortunately, are growing exponentially. The issues of hunger throughout Tigray, the blockading of relief food that's coming in, the fact that they're allowing food in that has been spoiled and rancid and keeping for themselves as the military the healthy foods, like the stories that we heard over and over and over again, were heart-wrenching and devastating.
Yeah. So thanks so much for painting that picture to us, and it's also heartwarming in terms of people, despite their shortage, lack, and of food themselves, they are sharing what they have and doing all the best they can. Children.
So if it wasn't for the people of Mekelle, there would have been hundreds, if not thousands of deaths. The people of Mekelle literally took the clothes off their backs, literally took the food off their children's tables, and shared it with those who are pouring into the city.
Mm-hmm. That's great here. And while we wait for Susan to join us, one thing that you mentioned in your just recent tweet was this. I just want to share it because we have, as he cared for his sheep, we have to care for the father. And this Twitter from yesterday where you talk about his safety. Is there any that we know or we should know? Because I have also another social media postage where they are calling, for his maybe, attack him or even remove him and so on. So is there anything that the world should know in terms of the safety of Patriarch Mathias?
Yes, and what I would like to say is two things. One is in that tweet there, if thousands of people surround his home, I would call upon the people of Ethiopia. I don't care where you are from in Ethiopia. This is the Holy Father. This is your Holy Father. You need to surround his place and do not allow anyone to touch him or those who follow him. He is doing the will of God. He has spoken what God has given him for the sake of Ethiopia, for the sake of the people of the nation. And so I want to call you, please surround him and protect him. Secondly, I want the world to know, I can't give you specifics on this, but I am in dialogue with government leaders, with world leaders who are aware of the threats against Abune Mathias, and they are watching. The wrath of the world will fall upon the government of Ethiopia if they are harmed, and they need to back off and keep him safe.
Speaking to that, this is a Twitter account where clearly this person is calling, for, people to do something to this. He just clearly said that, calls the Abune, the father, the Holy Father, the racist. And obviously in that message, which is subtitled now, let me play. It's clearly, calling for all Ethiopians to do something about the whole country.
ኢትዮጵያውያንና ኢትዮጵያውያት በሙሉ በአሁኑ ጊዜ ተጉሞ በፍርሃት እና በተጽዕኖ እኛ እስካሁን ድረስ አልተናገርንም። ለምን የባሰ ጉዳት እንዳይደርስ በሚልም እንደገና ደግሞ እነሱ የሚሉት በጦርነቱ በኩል ያለው አንሶ እንደገና ደግሞ በግል ወደየቤቱ እየዞሩ ወደየከተማው ወደየመንደሩ ወደየግለቤቱ እየዞሩ ንጹሃን ዜጎችን እየቀሰፉ ይገኛሉ። ይህ እንግዲህ
Okay, Susan, welcome to UMD show.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So I was speaking with Dennis about what he experienced and saw in Mekelle, as well as the specific message His Holiness Patriarch Mathias want the world to hear. So what was your experience, Susan, in Mekelle? What did you see specifically related to your, the support you are giving to the people there?
Well, I understood that one of the most helpful things someone can do for someone who's been traumatized is to just listen to their story, to let them tell their story, to hear them, to care and empathize with them, and help them identify what was the hardest part for them. And so I did a lot of, first of all, training some leaders that were selected in trauma healing so that they could help others and help others, because there are not enough counselors or social workers to care for the hundreds and thousands of people who've been terribly traumatized. So while I wasn't training them, I was listening to stories, mostly of women and children. And I'm happy to share some of those stories if you'd like.
Yes, please. Yeah, that would be good.
So one of the stories that grabbed my heart immediately and just never left my mind was that of Dahap, that little girl pictured. And we were sitting in a tent, and she came in, and her big brown eyes were just overflowing with tears. And she told me through my translator, Birkti, that she is from the city or town of Makadra in West Tigray. And apparently the military came into town and raided the town. She happened to be with her uncle at the time. Her parents were not with her. So she fled with her uncle on foot from the soldiers. And in the midst of that, her uncle was shot dead. And so she kept running. Apparently she was with her uncle's son, and they ran all the way to Shira. And they stayed there for 4 months, but Shira was becoming so overrun with refugees, IDPs, that they were running out of food and water. So I don't even know how, but she alone made her way down to Mekelle and found the IDP center that we were working with. And she'd only been there for 3 weeks. And the hardest part for Dahap is she has no idea if her parents are alive, if her brothers and sisters are alive. Apparently an aid organization is looking for them. They've searched the Sudanese refugee camps. They can't find them. So I told Dahap I would pray every day that her parents will find her. But she's just a precious, precious soul, such a sweet-spirited young 13-year-old, and she will forever be in my heart.
This is the Momona school refugee that you are talking about, right?
She was in a different camp.
Okay, in a different camp. And you mentioned somewhere, I think this is where you have the kids that you have been trying to help. And I'm just, you talk about how resilient they are and so on. This, they might not have their parents alive. They don't know where they are. They moved long distances without adult with them and so on. So what is your experience in terms of seeing this and not the world, the whole world or the international community doing anything that would change the course of these kids?
In terms of intervention?
Yeah.
Well, I think as His Holiness pointed out, the world has to get involved. We need other governments to please put an end to this. Get the troops out of Tigray. Send the Eritreans back to Eritrea. Send the military out of the region, because that is the cry of the hearts. There was one older woman in her 60s who said, "We don't understand what's happened. We've lived at peace all these years in our villages, no problem at all. And now all of a sudden they're driving us out. They're saying we need to die." They don't understand. All the people want is peace. They want to go home.
The other thing that we need, and what Abune Mathias is calling for, is for the religious leaders of the world. We need the Pope. We need the Archbishop of Canterbury. We need every religious leader. We need millions of pastors. We need people to rise up and say, this has to end now for the sake of the souls of these people. And this should never happen. And what I kept telling people, they're saying, well, you don't know the history. It's not about the history. If this was happening in Amara, we would stand up and scream as well. We would call upon the world leaders to stop it. This should never happen in any place on the planet, and it has to end.
That's very important to underline. This is not about, who the victims are and who the culprits are, right? Who the criminals are. It's about people getting killed, massacred, mass raped, right? And, kids suffering without anything that would explain that or justify that, and so on. In terms of calling to religious leaders worldwide, if you were to speak to religious leaders in Ethiopia, outside even the Orthodox Church. So Abune Mathias, I was telling Dennis that how healing his message was. Millions of people's heart are now warmer than before, getting some heal and so on, right? So if you were to call to, religious leaders in Ethiopia, what would be the call that you would be making?
I would call upon them to consider if this was their daughter who was shot in the knee, if this was their daughter who watched her uncle be murdered and is alone searching for her family, to respond as though this was happening to you in your home by someone else. And you can name whatever person that is, but if this was happening to you as a religious leader, you would want the rest of the world's religious leaders to cry out and say, no more, it has to end. And that's what we're calling the world to do. That is what we're calling every human to do. We would love to see hundreds of millions, billions of people rise up and say, this has got to end now for the sake of our sons and daughters. We are a family. We might be from another nation, but when we're in Ethiopia, it's funny, our friends in Tigray, they say, when you go to the airport and they ask where you're going, you need to tell them home, because you are Tigrayan. You love us. You are a part of our family, and we are. And it doesn't matter where I was born. What matters is that I love the people of Tigray. I love the people that we've poured into and worked with in South Africa. God has called us together. We are from the same Father God. And we need to stand up as though this was our child and fight for them as though this was our own child.
Susan, you worked, in terms of this trauma and so on. So those who are in diaspora, who have been, for the last 6 months, advocating day and night, crying out for the voiceless and so on. So what is your assessment? How do you speak to the trauma people are suffering outside? Because not knowing, I know many people have no idea the whereabouts of their families, their loved ones, and so on. It happened for me, like for the first 80 days, I didn't know whether my mom was alive and so on. So can you speak to that?
Yes. I think, the secondary trauma that people are experiencing is very real and very painful, because I imagine one of the things that you're feeling is helplessness. What can we do? We're doing everything we can, but we want to do more. And I think it's very imperative that these people also either support one another through listening, through helping, get some counseling, get the necessary support that you need, prayer, because this is a serious trauma for you as well. Even when we first found out about what was happening, I read a few articles and I couldn't read anymore. I was just crying too much. It impacted me terribly. And I'm so far removed. And so I can't imagine how people are feeling whose relatives and friends are there. It's devastating. So they need as much support as they can get.
Mm-hmm. Given that, thank you. Given that what we know now, and with this message from the Patriarch and the advocacies that you are making. God bless you on that. All these, how do you see the world, reconsidering or reacting or acting in the coming days and weeks, in your opinion?
I mean, my hope and my prayer is that the world will hear this and rally. This man, Abune Mathias, at great risk, has now taken a stand, knowing that he could lose his life, knowing that those around him could lose their lives, which will break his heart more than if he loses his own. His heart is for the people of Ethiopia. The world needs to stand up and scream. The nations need to sanction. They need to do whatever it takes to make this end. The religious leaders need to rise up and say, we will not stand for this. We are family. And so my hope is that these messages will just circle the globe again and again. I'm trying to put out as much information as I can as the articles come out. The BBC is now involved. CNN is working on something right now. The AP has put out something, the Washington Post. My hope is all the media will rally, that they will stand up, and that the message of Abune Mathias will literally circle the globe and echo throughout the ears of world leaders to help this come to an end.
Yeah, it all started with the AP Africa, and then, like you said, now it's going to Washington Post, BBC, and MSN, and so on. I don't want to keep you here for long, but maybe if the Tigray people were right now to listen to you, what would you tell them? I end with that. Susan, you may start there.
I would tell them that Dennis and I love them very much, but even more than that, God in heaven, the Lord Jesus Christ, loves them very much. And I'm so thankful that His Holiness was able to send out that message of love. And I want to echo his words. Don't be demoralized. Be courageous. Pray. Believe that this will end. God is on your side. He is fighting for you. We are fighting for you. We will awaken the world. One of my efforts too is I heard on the news that relief supplies, food and water are not able to get through to the people in remote areas. And, we are just calling down food from heaven if need be. These people must live. And so we are going to get the message out on behalf of the people of Tigray as best we can, day and night, until this war ends. And after it ends, we've told our friends there, we will be with you until you've completely rebuilt yourselves. So you have allies and friends across the world who care about you. Don't be disheartened.
Thank you. Dennis?
Yeah, to the people of Tigray, and actually to the nation of Ethiopia, what I would say is we love you, and we are fighting on behalf of you all. You need to come together. You need to stand up to the corruption. You need to fight the genocide and the raping and the destruction together as a family. You are one. And allow this message from His Holiness to be the rallying cry to together say, we are not going to allow leaders to divide us. We are going to be the people of Ethiopia, and we're going to fight for you. I want to let the political leaders there know. Meetings are lining up with U.S. political leadership and people here who are going to hear the truth. They're going to hear what's going on. And we will fight and fight and fight for the sake of those who have been, literally, their lives have been destroyed. Farms have been burned down. Their businesses have been destroyed. The people that Susan taught the trauma healing to, they were community leaders. They were teachers in the schools. They're people who have been pouring out their lives for the sake of the nation, and their lives have been obliterated for no reason. And so every Ethiopian all around the globe, now is the time to stand up and to fight. And for the rest of the world, for all of us, we cannot ignore this. One of the great regrets of this last generation was waiting and doing nothing during Rwanda. This is our generation's Rwanda. We cannot deny it. We cannot bury our heads. I understand the world has had a bad year, but this has to be the time that we rise up and say no more. It has to end now.
Great. Clearly the message that the world needs to hear, Ethiopians in general to hear, people in Tigray to hear. And I thank you very much for your time, and God bless you for doing this. I can tell you again that many people who were left, alone, who were lonely, during the last 6 months, felt they have the Father with them. They have the church with them, at least with that very important message. Like you said, he just did it without no planning, no rehearsing, and so on. That poured, from his heart. That meant a lot.
Yeah.
And thank you very much.
One last thing I would say. So when I was with him and he was talking about you, Tigray, I've never, in all the time I've been with him, I've never seen him cry, and he began to cry. He teared up and he had to pause because his heart is broken for you. He loves you. He loves you. And he knows that God loves you, and his heart is broken for you. Do not fear. You are not alone. We're not going to ignore this, and we know that you're there. You're loved.
Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot. And I will let you go to your next show, and I will be playing the full message of His Holiness with the English subtitle. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Dennis.
Yeah, thank you so much. God bless.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
You have been watching to my conversation with Dennis and Susan Wadley. They brought to us, to the world, the video message of His Holiness Patriarch Mathias of Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. This have been the long-awaited video message the world needed to hear, and he called upon the people of Ethiopia in the country and outside the country to heed his message to stop Tigray genocide. He called the war on Tigray for what it is, Tigray genocide. And he also called the international community to intervene and stop these massacres that are happening, mass raping of women and children, displaced, to stop. So I'll be playing the full message of His Holiness with English subtitle, and stay tuned.
እጅግ የሚያሳዝን ደግሞ እንደገና ዘረፋ ደግሞ አለ። የትግራይ ንብረት ተዘርፎ አልቋል። ሀገሩ በስመ አብ ወወልድ ወመንፈስ ቅዱስ አሐዱ አምላክ አሜን። በሀገር ውስጥም ከሀገር ውጭም ያላችሁት ኢትዮጵያውያንና ኢትዮጵያውያት በሙሉ በአሁኑ ጊዜ በሀገራችን በኢትዮጵያ በተለይ ደግሞ በትግራይ ክልል እየተካሄደ ያለው አረመኔነት፣ የአረማዊነት ስራ እንዲቆም ብዙ ጊዜ ሞክሬ አልተሳካም። ምክንያቱም ፈቃድ አልተሰጠም። እናገራለሁ፣ ይመልሱታል፣ እናገራለሁ፣ ይመልሱታል። ይሄው እስካሁን ድረስ ምንም አይነት ፈቃድ አልተገኘም እና ሁላችሁም ወገኖቻችን ማወቅ ያለባችሁ እዚህ ያለውን ችግር፣ የኔን ችግር የማውቀው እኔ ነኝ እና አሁን በኢትዮጵያ ወይም ደግሞ በተለይ በትግራይ ክፍለ ሀገር በተለይ እየተካሄደ ያለው የአረማዊነት ስራ ብዙ ጊዜ ሞክሬያለሁ ለመቃወም፣ ግን ስላልተፈቀደ ወይም ወደ አየር ለመውጣት ስላልተፈቀደ እየታፈነ እየቀረ ነው እስካሁን ድረስ ያለሁትና አሁን ያው ያለውን ሁኔታ በትግራይ ክልል በተለያዩ አካባቢዎች አለ፣ በኦሮሚያም አለ፣ በቤኒሻንጉል አለ፣ በሸዋሮቢት አለ፣ በልዩ ልዩ አካባቢዎች ችግር እንዳለ ይታወቃል። ነገር ግን የትግራይን ያህል አይደለም። የትግራይ ችግር እጅግ የከፋ እጅግ በጭካኔ የተሞላበት የአረመኔያዊነት ስራ እየተሰራ እንደሆነ እንኳን እኔ ዓለም አውቆታል። አሁን ዓለም አውቆታልና አሁንስ ልናገር ብዬ አሁን በሚያዝያ 7 ያደረግኩት ኢንተርቪው ሚያዝያ 7 2013 ማለት ነው ያደረግኩት ኢንተርቪው አሁን ታግደዋል። እና አሁን ምንድነው ይህ አሁን እየተደረገ ያለው የህዝብ እልቂት በተለይ ደግሞ ሲቪሊያን የሆኑ ወገኖቻችን ወደየከተማው ወደየመንደሩ ወደየግለቤቱ ሰብ እየሄዱ ወጣቶቹን እየገደሉ ገድለው ደግሞ እንዳይተው እንዲያውም ወደ ገደል እየጣሉ ተገድለው እንኳን ለመቃብር ያልበቁ ለምሳሌ እንደ ማህበረ ዲዮቅ አይነት አሁን እስካሁን ድረስ እልቂቱ 5 ወር አሁን 6ኛ ወራችን ነው። እስካሁን ድረስ ይሄው ግድያው እየተካሄደ ነው ያለው። ይህ ግፍ እንግዲህ እግዚአብሔር እንዴት እንደሚመልሰው የራሱ ዳኝነት ይኖራል። ነገር ግን ህዝብ እያለቀ ነው ያለው። ክፉኛ እያለቀ ነው ያለው። ሴቶች እየተደፈሩ ነው ያሉት። ሴቶች እየተሳቀዩ ነው ያሉት። እንዲያውም ከነሱ የሞቱ ወንዶቹ ይሻላሉ። ዘላለማዊ ስቃይ በህይወታቸው ሙሉ ከአእምሯቸው የማይፋቅ ጠባሳ እያስቀመጡባቸው ነው ያሉ በኢትዮጵያ በትግራይ ሴቶች ላይ እና የሁሉ እልቂት እንዴት እንደሚቆም ምን እንደሚደረግ እኔ በእውነቱ አላውቅም። እና የዓለም መንግስታት ሁሉ ሰምተውት እኔ አሁን እየተናገርኩ ያለሁት ዓለም ያወቀውን ነው። እስካሁን ድረስ ያው 6 ወር ሙሉ አፋችን ተለጉሞ በፍርሃት እና በተጽዕኖ እኛ እስካሁን ድረስ አልተናገርንም። ለምን የባሰ ጉዳት እንዳይደርስ በሚልም እንደገና ደግሞ እነሱ የሚሉት በጦርነቱ በኩል ያለው አንሶ እንደገና ደግሞ በግል ወደየቤቱ እየዞሩ ወደየከተማው ወደየመንደሩ ወደየግለቤቱ እየዞሩ ንጹሃን ዜጎችን እየቀሰፉ ይገኛሉ። ይህ እንግዲህ እጅግ የሚያሳዝን ደግሞ እንደገና ዘረፋ ደግሞ አለ። የትግራይ ንብረት ተዘርፎ አልቋል። ህይወቱም ንብረቱም መብቱም ተገፈዋል። የትግራይ ህዝብ ሁሉንም ነው የተገፈፈው። ንብረቱም ህይወቱም መብቱም ተገፎ የትግራይ ህዝብ ካላጠፋንህ ብለው ይኸው እስካሁን ድረስ እርምጃ እየወሰዱ ይገኛሉ። እንግዲህ ይህ ሁሉ ችግር እየደረሰ ምንም አይነት ድንጋጤ የሌላቸው ምንም አይነት ምክንያቱም አሁንማ ይባስ ተብሎ ገበሬዎች እርሻ እንዳያርሱ እንኳን ተከልክለዋል። እርሻ እንኳን እንዳያርሱ ለሚመጣው የሚመጣውን ችግራቸው እንዲያስወግዱ ወይም ደግሞ የሚበሉትን የሚጠጡትን እንዲያገኙ አርሰው ቆፍረው ደክመው እንኳን እንዳይጠቀሙ እርሻ አታርሱም እያሉ የእርሻ መሳሪያዎችን እያቃጠሉ እንደገና ደግሞ ለምን ብላችሁት ነው እናንተ እኮ አልቃችኋል እናንተ እኮ መኖር አልተፈቀደላችሁም በዚህ ምድር ላይ መኖር አልተፈቀደላችሁም እናንተ በምንም አይነት መኖር እንዳትኖሩ ተወስኖባችኋል እና ለምንድን ነው የምታርሱት እያሉ እየከለከሉ ይሄውና እርሻ እንኳን ተከልክለዋል ሌላው ቀርቶ ሌላው ንብረት ስፍር ቁጥር የሌለው ንብረት ነው እንግዲህ የተወሩት በአብያተ ክርስቲያናት ላይ ይተኩሳሉ በገዳማት ላይ ይተኩሳሉ በአክሱም በደብረ ዳሞ በአክሱም ወደ ደብረ ዳሞ የተተኮሱት መድፎች መቼም እጅግ የሚያስደነግጥ ነው የመነኮሳቱ ቤት ፈርሷል አንድ አባትም ተገድለዋል አክሱም ጽዮን ያለቀው ንብረታቸውን ለመጠበቅ ወይም ደግሞ ለዓለማስነካት ወይም ለዓለማስወረር እየጠበቁ ያሉትን በመደዳ ገድለዋቸው ረግፈው ቀርተዋል እንደቅጠል ረግፈው ቀርተዋል አሁን በዓለም ሚዲያዎች እየተነገረ ነው ያለው በዓለም ሚዲያዎች እየተነገረ ያለውን እኛ እንዳንናገር ተከልክለናል ስለዚህ ይሄ ጉዳይ በእውነቱ የዓለም መንግስታት ቶሎ ብለው እርዳታ ቢያደርጉ ቶሎ ብለው ወሳኝ የሆነ ይህንን ግድያ የሚገታ የነፃ እርምጃ ነፃ ግድያ ነፃ የሰው ህይወትን ማጥፋት እየገደሉ ነው ያሉት እንደዚህ ሰዎች እና ይህንን በእውነቱ የሚቀርበት መንገድ እንኳን የሚታገድበት መንገድ እንኳን ቢፈጠር አብያተ ክርስቲያናት ገዳማት ተመተዋል የዋልድባ መነኮሳት እድሜ ልካቸውን ከኖሩበት ገዳም ተባረው ይሄው ተበትነው ቀርተዋል ሽማግሌዎቹ መንገድ ላይ ተጥለዋል ጉልበት ያላቸው ሸሽተዋል እነሱ ግን ጉልበት የሌላቸው ግን መንገድ ላይ ተጥለው ቀርተዋል ሽማግሌዎቹ ህመምተኞቹ እንዲህ አይነት ግፍ ተደርጎ ተሰምቶ አይታወቅም እጅግ አስቀያሚ ነው በተለይ የሴቶች መደፈር በጣም የረከሰ በጣም የቆሸሸ በጣም ነውር የጸያፍ እየተሰራ ነው ያለው እንዲህ አይነት ድፍረት እንዲህ አይነት ቆሻሻ የሆነ ስራ መስራት በእውነቱ ይገባል ወይ እግዚአብሔርን ሳይፍሩ ይህን የሚሰሩ ሰዎች እግዚአብሔርን ሳይፍሩ እንደው ሰው ምን ይለናል እንኳን አይሉም ወይ ምን አይነት ፍጥረቶች እንደሆኑ እኔ በእውነቱ አዝናለሁ እጅግ አዝናለሁ እስካሁን ድረስ እኔ አፌ ተረጉሞ ተከልክዬ ነው እስካሁን ድረስ ይኸው እየተጨነቅኩ ያለሁት እና አሁን ይህንን ድርጊት ሳያመኝ ቀርቶ አይደለም ሳይሰማኝ ቀርቶ አይደለም እኔ በውጭ ሀገር እድል ባገኝ ኑሮ እዛ እንደ ልቤ መናገር ይችላለሁ እንደናንተ እንደምታደርጉት ነገር ግን እዚህ ውስጥ ያለው ችግር ግን ላልፈው አልቻልኩም ያዘጋጀሁትን ዝግጅት ሁሉ በየጊዜው እየታገደ ያው እስካሁን ድረስ በስቃይ እኖራለሁኝ እና ይህን ወጥቶ የዓለም መንግስታት ቶሎ ብለው ይህን ነገር እንዲቆም ለማድረግ የሚቻልበትን መንገድ ቢሞክሩ አብያተ ክርስቲያናት መቼስ በነ ደብረ ዳሞ እና አክሱም ብቻ አይደለም በነ አሲምባ የነበረው የባህታዊ ዘወንጌል ቤተክርስቲያን አዲስ ቤተክርስቲያን ተመተዋል እነ ማርያም ደንገላት ላይ ያለቁት ሰዎች ጸሎት ላይ ኑሮ ጸሎታቸውን ጨርሰው ሲወጡ በአውደ ምህረት ነው ያረግፈዋቸው እንደቅጠል ይሄ በእውነት ምን አሁን በየአካባቢ ይሄ መከራ ያልደረሰበት አካባቢ የለም ሁሉም ተመተዋል ሁሉም ተደብድበዋል ሁሉም እንደው ከምድር ገጽ እናንተ ከምድር ገጽ ካልጠፋችሁ እንቅልፋን አንተኛም ብለው ትግሮች ካልጠፉ እንቅልፍ አናገኝም ብለው ይህን ሁሉ እያደረጉ ይገኛሉ እና ይሄ ጉዳይ የዓለም ህዝብ በይበልጥ እንዲያውቀውና አስቸኳይ እርዳታ እንዲያደርግ አስቸኳይ እርምጃ እንዲወስድ አስቸኳይ የሆነ ተግባር እንዲፈጽም ነው እኔ የምማጸነው። የዓለም አብያተ ክርስቲያናት በሙሉ ይህንን ጉዳይ ሰምተው ይህንን ጉዳይ አይተው የበኩላቸውን ድጋፍ እንዲያደርጉ የበኩላቸውን እገዛ እንዲያደርጉ ድምጽ መስጠት ራሱ ይህንን ድርጊት ተደርጎ የማይታወቅ በዓለም ተሰምቶ የማይታወቅ ስራ እኮ እየተሰራ ነው ያለው። በአፋችን እንኳን ለመናገር የማንደፍረው ጸያፍ እኮ እየተሰራ ነው ያለው በትግራይ ህዝብ ላይ እና ይሄን ጉዳይ እኔ በእኔ በኩል እንግዲህ ይሄ መልእክት ከደረሳችሁ ይህን የኔውን ችግርም ልታውቁልኝ ትችላላችሁ። እኔ ያረፍኩበት ጊዜ የለም። ህሊናዬ እንደታወከ ነው። አእምሮዬ እንደተበጠበጠ ነው ያለሁትና ይሄ ጉዳይ ምናልባት ይሄ ጉዳይ ድምጽ ተሰምቶ እገዛ ያደርግ ይሆን ወይ እና ይህን ጉዳይ ሁሉም እንዲያስብበት ነው የማስበው። እግዚአብሔር እንግዲህ ምሕረቱን ያምጣ። እግዚአብሔር የቸርነቱን ስራ ይስራ። ሌላው በዓለም የምንመክረውና የምናስተምረው በሀገር ውስጥ ያለው የትግራይ ህዝብ መቼም እግዚአብሔር ያበርታህ ነው የምለው። እግዚአብሔር ያበርታህ፣ ኃይሉን ብርታቱን ይስጥህ። መቼም ጊዜ የማያልፍ ነገር የለም፣ ያልፍ ይሆናልና ሞራላችሁ አይውደቅ፣ ፍርሃት ድንጋጤ አይደርስባችሁ። ያው እግዚአብሔር ያሳልፈው ብላችሁ ወደ እግዚአብሔር ጩኹ፣ ወደ አምላካችሁ። እውነተኛ ፍርድ ፈራጅ እግዚአብሔር ነው። እውነተኛ ፍርድ ያውቃል እና ወደ አምላካችሁ ለምኑ፣ ጸልዩ እና ያለውን ችግር ሁሉ እንዲያሳልፍላችሁ በርትታችሁ ጸልዩ። ሞራላችሁ የተደገፈ ይሁን። ብርታቱን ይስጣችሁ እግዚአብሔር ሁሉንም አስወግዶ ሰላማዊ ዘመን ያምጣልን። እግዚአብሔር ይባርካችሁ። እግዚአብሔር ይቀድሳችሁ። እግዚአብሔር በምህረቱ በቸርነቱ ይጎብኘን። እግዚአብሔር አምላክ ረድኤቱን ይላክልን። የሞቱትን ሰዎች እግዚአብሔር ነፍሳቸውን ይማር። የቆሰሉትን መድኃኒትን ይስጣቸው፣ መድኃኒቱን ይስጥልን። እናንተም በያላችሁበት ይጠብቃችሁ እና የትግራይ ህዝብ ምን እንዳደረገ በደሉ ምን እንደሆነ እንዲህ ከምድር ገጽ ካላጠፋንህ ተብሎ እና የህዝብ የዘር ማጥፋት ስራ እየተሰራ ነው ያለው እና ይሄ ጉዳይ ሁሉም እንዲያስብበት፣ ዓለም ሁሉ እንዲያውቅበት፣ በእርግጥ አውቆታል፣ እያወቀው ነው እና ይሄ ጉዳይ እንዲታወቅበት ብዬ አሳስባለሁ። እግዚአብሔር ይባርካችሁ፣ ይቀድሳችሁ። አሜን።
That was His Holiness Abune Mathias, Patriarch of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, with his long-awaited video message on Tigray genocide. This video was recorded on a smartphone by Dennis Wadley, who has been very active in Ethiopia, specifically in Tigray, with Ethiopian Orthodox Church, training at the master's level, community health development, leadership, and so on. So he had the opportunity on April 26 to meet His Holiness in Addis. That was without any planning and rehearsal, recorded his message because he was muzzled for 6 months. He couldn't speak about that, and whenever he gave interview, even including to the church's media, that was not to be aired because of the silencing efforts from the government and other parties. UMD Media had an interview with Dennis and Susan, who went for 1 week to Mekelle as well. and they were very vocal in terms of Tigray genocide since December, talking about that on their networks, social media. And this is the first ever to hear from the church, from the head of the church on Tigray genocide. And his call has been for the international community, for Ethiopians living in Ethiopia and outside Ethiopia, and also for church leaders worldwide. And Dennis mentioned in my conversation with him that they are working with governments globally, and they will be working with church leaders, including the Pope in Vatican, on voicing and acting upon what His Holiness Abune Mathias had in his message. And his message was clear, loud, and he cares for his children in Tigray and elsewhere. He has been actually very consistent in terms of calling for national dialogue, for peace, security, and safety of people. This is his message from September.
ከሁሉ በፊት ሁሉም የፖለቲካ ልሂቃን ያለምንም ልዩነት በአንድ አዳራሽ ተገናኝታችሁ በመወያየት ለዚህ ሀገርና ሕዝብ የሚበጅ ነገርን ፍጠሩ። ኢትዮጵያ ሰላም፣ እኩልነት፣ አንድነት፣ የህይወትና የንብረት ዋስትና ይከበሩ የሚሉትን መሰረታዊ ነገሮች የጋራ አድርጋችሁ ያዙልን። ሌላውን ለህዝቡ ስጡትና እሱ ራሱ የፈለገውን ርዕዮተ ዓለም የፈለገውን መንግስት ራሱ መርጦ ያስቀምጥ። የምንመክረውና የምናስተምረው ከሁሉ በፊት ሁሉም የፖለቲካ ልሂቃን ያለምንም ልዩነት በአንድ አዳራሽ ተገናኝታችሁ በመወያየት ለዚህ ሀገርና ህዝብ የሚበጅ ነገርን ፍጠሩ። ኢትዮጵያ ሰላም፣ እኩልነት፣ አንድነት፣ የህይወትና የንብረት ዋስትና ይከበሩ የሚሉትን መሰረታዊ ነው የጋራ አድርጋችሁ ያዙልን። ሌላውን ለህዝቡ ስጡትና እሱ
This is his message from September 2020 during the celebration of the finding of the true cross, Maskal, otherwise called Maskal, at Maskal Square in Addis. So he's calling for national dialogue, prioritizing the security, peace, and safety of the people of Ethiopia, and for political actors to prioritize dialogue, and the rest would be taken care of by the people themselves. That's what his message was on direct televised by the national television from Maskal Square.
ራሱ የፈለገውን ርዕዮተ ዓለም የፈለገውን መንግስት ራሱ መርጦ ያስቀምጥ። ሰው በሌላው ዓለም ሂዶ ሰላም ባለበት ሀገር ሂዶ ተሰዶ በሰላም እየኖረ ነው። በሰው ሀገር በሀገሩ ስደተኛ ሆነ ምንድን አይገርምም? አዎ። ታዲያ ይሄንን እግዚአብሔር አምላክ ያርቅልን። ሁለተኛ
This is his message, the message of His Holiness way before the start of Tigray genocide. He was speaking to the fact that many were being displaced, internally displaced in Ethiopia, and is tearful in shaking in speaking about that. And he's mentioning that people moving to other countries from Ethiopia and living in peace wherever they go, whereas within their country they are being displaced and so on. So he's saying this isn't this surprising, and he's shaking and he's he is tearful in speaking to that. So this is not the first time His Holiness is speaking to the atrocities against people, but of course in his latest message from Tigray or on Tigray genocide, he's making a clear distinction on atrocities happening elsewhere and the scale and magnitude and the type and diversity of atrocities happening in Tigray, and calling it for what it is, Tigray genocide.
እንግዲህ እግዚአብሔር አምላክ ይህንን አዲሱን ዓመት ያ ሁሉ መከራና ስቃይ አሳልፎ ህዝባችን ህዝበ ኢትዮጵያ በሙሉ ደህና እንዲሆን በሰላም ወጥቶ እንዲገባ በሰላም ልጆቹን እንዲያስተምር በሰላም በሀገሩ በሰላም እንዲኖር ባዕድ አልመጣበት። ባዕድ ወራሪ እኮ ሲመጣ እኮ ባዕድ ነው። ሰው ወገን በወገኑ ላይ እንዲህ ማድረጉ ነው የሚያስደንቀው። በእውነቱ ሀገሩ ሰፊ ነው። ሀገሩ የጋራ ነው። ሀገሩ የእግዚአብሔር ነው። እንዴት እንደዚያ ሁሉ ይሆናል?
During his message, which looks like to be by the new year, so it could be September as well, September last year, he's specifically mentioning that the atrocities that are happening against people sounded like or looked like it's happening by under foreign forces. What His Holiness didn't see coming is what is happening now in Tigray, because the atrocities are happening both by foreign forces, Eritrean forces, and Ethiopian forces, of course. So His Holiness, consistent to what he was doing before the war on Tigray, he was, according to his message, he has been trying to speak up, to declare the war for what it is, what's happening against churches in Tigray, the people, the faithful, the whole millions of Tigray people. But he was muzzled, he was silenced. Whenever he gave an interview, that was not meant to be aired because of Ethiopian authorities and so on. So this program, this show ends here. It was my pleasure to talk to Dennis Wadley and Susan Wadley, his wife Susan, who have been active in Ethiopia in general and in Tigray in particular for more than a decade now. But they were instrumental in getting out the long-awaited video message from His Holiness Abune Mathias, Patriarch of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. So this was the end of the show. Your host was Getachew Asafa. Please share, subscribe if you are following us on Twitter, on Facebook, and on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. That was the end of the show. Have a good one.